Hello and welcome to episode 3 of Pod of Ages. Today we will be talking about liking players that others dislike, or if there are any pro players that are, quote, hard, end quote, to like. Our second topic will be the relationship between the fan and the professional player. And I'm very excited to have with us on this episode Ginger, who can be found on Twitter at BloomFusion. Ginger, do you want to do a quick introduction about yourself?
Sure. So I've been doing lolly sports for about 4 years now. It's gonna be 4 coming up. I got into that in a very strange way. I basically stumbled upon TSM Legends and watched that for some reason. And that pretty much birthed my being a TSM fan. And now, a million years down the line, now I'm just a Jensen fan. So.
That's proper character development.
Right, yeah.
I'd actually be curious to know how many people who are LCS fans who have never watched TSM Legends, because I feel like almost everybody I know, they say something like, I found out about esports, and then I watched TSM Legends.
Right.
And then insert blank.
Yeah, well, I watched Fnatic Legends. So
oh my god.
That's totally different.
Fnatic Linda has reappeared.
Well, so the truth of it is, the only reason I even watched TSM Legends is because there was an episode that Leffen was in, and I was a huge Leffen fan at that time.
Oh.
And then I just thought like the episode was interesting, and like some of the other players aside from him were interesting, and then I ended up watching that whole season. And this is season 5. So that
So are you a huge Smash fan?
No.
Okay.
Nope, not
Just
at all.
Leffen.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, so we are here actually to talk about a pro player that I don't actually know that much about, but Ginger and Linda are big fans of, and that's of course Jensen. And point of order before we continue with this episode, I have received a request for Linda to explain the milk meme. As undoubtedly we will make a reference to it in this episode.
Oh, I'm sure of
I
it.
mean, okay, so I hope people don't listen to it. First of all, they're probably gonna think, what? Which, totally understandable, because I don't really know how I came across it. I remember I became a fan of Jensen, and then because he's a really pale person.
I know. I was thinking of it. I'm like, I don't even know how it started personally. Like it was like we woke up one day and all of a sudden he's like dairy and bread products. Like I don't know.
Yeah, we're like, oh, Jensen is like he's a loaf of bread. It's like genius. That's exactly what it is. And I don't know. I hope people don't like take offense to this, but it's just because I find Jensen to be really pale. And then I started doing this thing where I started to kind of like, when I mentioned him, instead of just writing Jensen, I Googled like stereotypical white people food. And I was like, I love you, my casserole. Oh, get that double kill. You're so good. My stale piece of toast, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, see, so that's what's funny to me, because I always thought that the meme was like stereotypical white people things, and not just white people things, like things that to me are extremely like American white.
Mm-hmm.
So it was really funny because you were bringing out things like casseroles, and in my head I'm like, do Danish people even eat casseroles?
I mean, I couldn't be like, yeah, you go my banana curry pizza, because that's just a thing I like. Because nobody seems to like banana curry pizza.
I gotta say, I'm offended. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I had to be relatable and be like, well, everyone can relate to a stale piece of sourdough bread. That's something we've all had in our lives, probably.
So, I mean, actually, I think this is a perfect segue. I think for some people, Jensen is banana curry pizza. I think people like you two, I know, who really like him. And I know there's quite a few people who dislike him. So, Ginger, do you kind of want to talk about why you're a big Jensen fan?
That's funny too, because I was just recently thinking about like how polarizing he is. Like there doesn't seem to be very many people who are just kind of like, he's fine. You know, everyone either is like huge
Mm-hmm.
fans like us, or they're just like he's playing against Bjergsen, kill him. Like it's like one or the other. So, why? It's always kind of a blur. Like I always get like super hard into players, a group, anything like that, and it's just it all kind of like goes downhill so fast. I don't even know how it happened. But I think the pivotal point was probably the missed Zanyas.
Oh yeah. Oh.
Because like I tend to have a thing where I gravitate towards players who I feel like are kind of getting the shit end of the stick.
Yeah.
And it just causes me to pay more attention to them, and I guess in sort of like do they really deserve like all of what they're getting, you know, from fandom, from anything else like that. And
so tell me about the missed Zanyas.
So it was against TSM. I don't remember which finals it was because it was so long ago, and I think we've all kind of tried to block it out of our memory. But yeah, it was during a pivotal team fight at the end of the game. He went in, missed the Zanya's timing, died, and they lost the game off of that. This is mostly the only thing that anyone talks about when it comes to that game.
Yeah.
Completely ignoring the fact that the only reason they had made it to that point in the game was because of him. But that's the only part that anyone talks about.
Mm-hmm.
So you were not a C9 fan before this?
No. I think I was kind of on the edge of it. I think I was going through a team crisis at this point. Was this summer 2016, Linda?
Okay, wait. The Jensen Sonyas. I think it was actually spring finals 2017 because I remember I was at the EU LCS finals in Hamburg, and I was watching it on like a bad phone, and then that happened. I was like, nope, not seeing that anymore, and then I ran off.
So that makes sense. So before now, mostly, I had kind of been going through a long team crisis, mostly because I was a huge Yellow Star fan when he was on TSM. And then that situation happened, and then he went back, and then he retired. So there was kind of like nothing for me anymore after that for a long time. And then, I don't know, I just, that situation happened, and I started paying more attention to Jensen based off of it, and didn't like the way that the community was handling it at all, and kind of made me get on my white knight high horse and battle everyone for his love and honor.
So I definitely want to come back to this, so we're going to put a pin on this, but I'm going to turn around and ask you, Linda, how did you get into this?
It's pretty much kind of like the same story, because I remember Ginger and we were screaming at each other on Twitter about like, why is everyone being so mean to Jensen? Because I remember after spring finals, I think it was at the start of the summer split. I don't know who decided it, but the NALCS production crew, they were kind of like, okay, we're gonna highlight the missed Sonyas, and then
you're right, it was spring.
Exactly. And then there were like some casters who every time C9 had a game, and like if Jensen was playing Echo, or had Sonyas, I don't know, but they would say like, oh well, good thing he pressed Sonyas there, wouldn't want him to miss it, haha. And it's like, it was the funny, the first time, but now it's the 58th time, and I don't really know if I want to hear this joke anymore. And then also on Reddit, it was just like, I remember, I think it was in playoffs or something, because I think C9 got knocked out pretty early, but there was one game where Jensen had to he paused because there was a medical issue.
Yes.
Yeah. and he
had an anxiety
exactly anxiety attack. And when it was released that he had an anxiety attack, the community was like, there were a lot of insensitive comments that were upvoted that said like, oh well, he couldn't keep up with the tempo or something like that, and tactical pause or something like that. And just like, I just found it so insensitive, and like, why is he being the focus of so much hate? Like, what has he done except for his past, and also the whole Missed Sonya's thing? But it was just so interesting. But also for me personally, I found it kind of sad that so many people seem to be against him, because I just thought that he's just trying his best.
It is kind of interesting because neither of you until this moment have sort of brought up his past, and that's actually one of the first things I ever learned about Jensen. And of course, I doubt there's anybody who doesn't know this, but of course, Jensen, before he became a LCS pro, was essentially like permabanned from being a pro because he, I believe the allegations, and this is the lawyer in me coming out, the allegations are that he DDoS'd people. He was extremely toxic, like on group chat, like multiple times, and was like, reprimanded by Riot for that. He was a coach for a little while for SK Gaming, and then they made it to Worlds, and then Riot decided that he wasn't allowed to be a coach because coaches were officially recognized in Korea. This was the position at the time, that coaches were officially recognized by Riot Korea, and since he was permabanned from being in any part of the League of Legends professional scene, he wasn't allowed to go. Then, as I think everyone quite famously knows, Hai retired as being, or was pushed out, depending on how you want to put it, C9's mid laner. And Incarnation, which was Jensen's in-game name at the time, came in, and this was sort of like the great forgiveness by Riot of Jensen, allowing him to be an LCS pro. So I think I've recently had conversations with people about this, because I would say maybe there are others, but to me, I think like the Incarnation / Jensen story is the first big reformed player arc in kind of modern LCS history.
Arguably the only completed one as well.
Yes, exactly. Arguably the only. Well, I think Tyler 1 has some about it, but
he wasn't a pro though.
Yes, he was not a pro. So I guess, before we move on to questions of what it's like to, either white knight or defend Jensen, what are your guys' thoughts on that whole, reformation narrative when it comes to Jensen?
I think the biggest thing that has to do with how I feel on it is just time. I think time is the biggest factor. Like I said before, I even was into LoL Esports. I was a Leffen fan, and if you're not familiar with his past, he has one pretty similar to Jensen's. So it's mostly time, and then what is done after that time, because it's I mean, we've seen it time and time again, right? The reformation arcs that are cut relatively short, arguably every split short.
Just say the name.
Dardoch, obviously.
Just say it. It's Dardoch. We're talking about Dardoch.
We are talking about Dardoch.
Who I've also stanned. So, it's just mostly like time, and what they do with that time.
Yeah, I kind of feel the same about time. It's kind of funny because I initially didn't really know much about Jensen, so I was like, he seems like a great guy. And then I dug a bit deeper. I was like, oh boy, what is this? Yeah. I found out all the things in the past. I was like, oh god. But yeah, it has a lot to do about, I guess, time, and also if it's a repeated occurrence. Like, you can kind of tell sometimes when people, like, if people haven't really truly changed, I feel like it's very hard to hide their true self, or I would say, like, hide certain behavior from popping up, which he who we just named but I shall not name has kind of shown time sometimes. And I feel like in Jensen's case, I at least haven't seen that much that he's kind of like gone back to his incarnation days. I just feel like he's kind of mellowed out and he just is there. Like, hello, I'm here to do my job.
Yeah.
How you doing?
And like,
yeah.
For example, I'm the kind of person that like when I'm going to stand someone, I like to do my research on what I'm getting into. And I had already been aware to some degree of his past. So when I decided that this was the road that I'm going down, I guess, you know, I started Googling and finding out all the stuff, and I heard about all of that. And I mean, you hear things from people who, you know, work in the community or are adjacent to the community that may not be public knowledge. So that helps as well, or hurts, depending on what you hear.
Yeah.
So, Ginger, was there ever a moment where when you were researching his past, you were like, oh, I don't know, or like you had to be like, okay, I got this information, but I know from XYZ factors, or I'm comfortable enough with XYZ factors that I know he's not a toxic person?
Yes, sort of.
Yes. Okay.
So it happened, but not when I was doing my research. It was when that clip came out of that girl. I don't remember who it was, but she basically said that he leaked private photos of her back during when he was doing all the rest of the nonsense. And that was one of those situations where I was like, I don't know if this is the kind of thing that I can get behind, you know? I had a conversation with a friend of mine who has worked with Jensen in the past, and I was just like, what do you think of this? Like, what do you think of this in conjunction with who he is that you're familiar with? And he was just like, he was just like, it's just not him anymore, you know? Like, yeah, he did that, and yeah, it's messed up. And like, it's not okay. But it's not him anymore. I was just like, okay. And it was one of those situations where I kind of put him on probation, you know? It's like, okay, you did this. Like, noted. We'll see what happens, you know?
Right.
You get
Puts
one.
you in the corner. Exactly.
Right. You get one. And so far, so good. So
that's actually a funny thing about Jensen for me, which is that obviously, as you guys all know, since the stuff, the nonsense, as you term it, the incarnation nonsense, there really, as far as I know, right, and I only know what's publicly available, there's been no real incident. I don't know of anything else anybody has ever said, well, Jensen is still like this because whatever, right? But I don't know if maybe this would be handled differently. Like if he had debuted now as Incarnation, we would handle it differently. But there's also, as far as I know, there's no real content or video or interview or anything I can point to where anybody's talked to Jensen about this. And that may be because the circumstances of his entering LCS was so unusual, at least at the time, both with him replacing High and with him essentially having to be like forgiven by the Pope of LCS, whoever that might be, and like brought back into the church of LCS, essentially. I mean, like, one, am I wrong? Is there something that, like, is there in fact something that has covered this that people can point to and say, you know, here, you know, or two, is that even necessary? Or three, is that something you would like for Jensen to even at one point talk about this?
I think that, like, just as you said that, you know, there are, I don't know how to describe them, but documentaries of short where people kind of like summarize the events. But yeah, there's not really much where someone has sat down with him and like directly asked him, what do you think about what you did in the past and what's different with how you are now? I think sometimes in passing he kind of like a double-lift in the past, that, you know, he kind of acknowledges like I was a bad person in the past, but unlike double-lift, who's really gotten down to like, well, I sucked in the past, he hasn't really gone too much in depth. And I don't know if it's because he feels like no one's really asked him, so it would kind of be weird if he turned on the stream and he was like, all right, today I'm going to talk about when I was an awful person. Sit down. Or, yeah, so I think I would kind of like it if someone out there were to be like, let's talk with Jensen about his past and see what he thinks, something like that.
I think times are different now with esports as opposed to when he entered again. I don't think doing stuff like that was as hot then as it is now. So I think everyone just kind of, he just kind of came in and everyone was just like, okay, well, I guess that's happening. And then like that was kind of it. No one bothered to, do an interview or like a comprehensive thing about it. Everyone just kind of let it go. Whereas now, for example, the Dardock stuff, he gets a show every split now, it seems like, for his redemption arc. But I think it's because that, that's what we do now. That's what happens now in esports, is like it's a story that people want to hear about. It's like, is he gonna implode again this time? And it's gotten to the point where I'm kind of tired of people even asking him about it. But I think that's a lot of the big reason that people don't even bother asking Jensen about it. It's been so long at this point.
Right.
I don't even know if it's worth having a conversation about anymore.
Oh, interesting. Okay. So you think that maybe it like the time thing also makes it so that maybe it's not something that's relevant to who he is now as a pro.
Just because so much time has passed since. Yeah. If the conversation had happened, back when he had joined, or maybe even, a year or two after that, but it's been so long now. Like, I mean, he almost has residency now. It's been that long.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
So now I think, it's a little bit kind of redundant almost to have the conversation about it. It would be nice, I guess, in a sense of like his story. A lot of people don't know, like, probably like all the stuff behind it. But I mean, for me personally, as someone that's a fan of him, it's not necessary for me. Like,
right, like you've made your peace with it.
Right, yeah. Like, there's not really much that you can say about it other than, especially because I don't think anything new would be said about it. He's already alluded to it enough in previous interviews that he was a piece of shit. I mean, how many more ways can he say it?
I mean, if I can give him like 58 different white people food names, I'm pretty sure he can come up with 58 different ways of saying how bad he was in the past.
That's fair.
No, I mean, like, I do, Linda, I do think to go back to what you were saying with Double Lift, that is true that I think Double Lift, his departure from CLG was so public that it required him to have this conversation over and over and over again. Why were you kicked from CLG? What have you learned since then? And now he has that story. I wouldn't say down pat, but definitely because he's been forced to talk about it so much. There's a particular like introspection and like narrative that he's developed around it, which I think is really interesting. Of course, I think with Double Lift, it's a little bit different because his issues were so related to the game, right? It was like about how he was a toxic individual in terms of the team, in terms of CLG, the professional team. And to Ginger's point, Jensen is unique in this sense because his toxicity was not related to himself as a pro player. It was almost entirely and by definition outside of the pro scene. And I myself have never heard of any story of him being a toxic individual in the sense of being like a teammate.
Yeah.
And
the only thing I've heard is like maybe he and Meteos didn't get along that great.
Oh yeah.
But that's it really.
So on being a white knight, I don't like using that term.
I know, me neither, but it's like the funniest thing.
Being defensive about Jensen, I think that's really interesting, and I not to get into like too gender politicky 101, but do you feel like there's any bit of that? Because Ginger, I know you are also a K-pop fan. And I am as well. In fact, all three of us are.
Yes.
And I think there's a particular culture in that fandom of wanting really heavily to defend our faves, right? So like even you know, like it's this really automatic defensive thing, like, oh well, they've worked so hard, oh well, like they deserve this credit, oh well, you know, this. No, you don't understand what happened, like you're just trying to like paint this narrative, you know, there's like a lot of that in that fandom. And do you feel like there's a lot of that too in esports?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if I don't really consider myself to be one of those people, more so in jest, I think. Mostly because I'm probably just too old for it. But like I do it in a sense, but I also just don't want to be one of those people. Like I very much don't believe in like going to bat for people like this that for all intents and purposes don't know who you are. Like I always joke that I'm not going to bat for dudes who are not feeding, fucking, or financing me. So it's pretty much how I feel on that front, even with Jensen. When it comes to people being really scummy to him, for example, like the Zanya's thing and like his mental health and stuff like that, like that's not okay. And that's not okay not because it's Jensen. Like it's just not okay, period. If they want to talk shit about, you know, him being worse than Bjergsen or like how he can't win against Bjergsen or, you know, any of that nonsense, like that's fine. Like you're allowed. I mean, the TSM subreddit is already aggressively obsessed with Jensen as it is. So like they don't need my help anyways.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I kind of feel the same way. I know that when I just started liking, and now I'm gonna talk about Clear Love because I always go into this tangent, but when I just started liking Clear Love, I was like really defensive about him. But that's because he had like his Lee Sin performance at Worlds, so that was kind of like his Sonya's thing that everyone was harping on about. But I think nowadays it's more like, okay, if he misplays or if he performs badly and someone's like, oh, he sucked, I'm like, okay, whatever. But if people start like insulting him, maybe his work ethic or him as a person, and saying like, oh, he's not doing anything, he's just dragging the team down. And same thing, like if they were to insult Jensen's mental health, it's like, okay, you don't have to attack them as a person unless they really are a bad person. Like you can say that they're bad at the game or whatever, but you don't have to really go after them as people.
Right, just say you think he's garbage and go. Like it doesn't have to be like that.
So I won't find you guys on Reddit like posting those long things, like those long essays people have where they detail exactly why so and so is a bad player.
Nope, only on private Twitter.
But I do wonder, like, you know, there's a lot of things where people will say stuff, and I immediately get defensive, but I don't ever say anything because I've been on the internet too long to try to, you know, like basically engage in those kind of conversations because I know they never go anywhere, with some minor exceptions. But I wonder, like, it's a funny defensive feeling. So I will divulge a personal thing, which is when Smeb left Rock's Tigers, there was a lot of discussion about whether or not he was a snake, which is to say whether or not he had essentially destroyed the Rock's Tigers, and their potential of getting a sponsorship and going on as a team because he had signed with KT Rollstar. And I will not bore all of you with the reasons why this is not true, but that was like it's such a funny thing because obviously whether or not I defend Smeb is not going to change anybody else's opinion of Smeb. Like if they feel that way about Smeb, whatever I say is not going to change their minds.
Right.
And like you say, he has no idea who I am, right? Like he doesn't understand English. So there's no way that he's like, well, Smeb may in fact do this, but like he's probably not out there like Reddit searching his name and like finding people who are talking about it, right? So I do think about this because it's such a funny instinct. Like I had to like talk myself down from engaging with people on this matter. And, you know, I'm sure you guys have similar feelings. Like there are moments where you're like, your instinct is just to like hit the keyboard and like, start, you know, like going on your like rant, your like 3-minute rant about why people are so wrong. and it's like it's a really strange instinct. It really is, and I think like, this is kind of to our second point. Like that relationship is so weird because it's not like they're asking us to do it, and I have no, like being a fan doesn't require you to do it. But my God, like when I am that person's fan, like that is an instinct I am having to rein in every time.
Yeah,
I've been there a million times. Jens is actually not the worst one though. Like it was the worst when I was a Yellow Star fan.
I mean,
oh really?
That's good because he needed fans like back in the days.
Yeah, it was super bad when he was on TSM. Ooh. Oh man, that was a full-time job right there.
Wait, so what was that like? Like I don't think you might be the first person I've talked to who was a Yellow Star fan while he was on TSM, and I sort of. I don't like being a Double-Ed fan, but one of the things I hate the most about him, so one of the things I dislike the most about him is how incredibly awful he is when he talks about Yellow Star.
Oh my God, it's so painful for me.
It's very bad. So please, Ginger, can you tell us what it was like?
It was rough. I actually started being his fan in particular when he joined TSM. Because I was a season 5 Fnatic fan. Linda, what's good?
Whoa, we're all in here. We're all in this together.
Yeah, but I was a Febiven fan.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So, then Yellow Star came to TSM, and then I kind of hopped ship and started paying attention to Yellow Star more. And it was the same situation, almost exactly as with Jensen that it was with Yellow Star. It's just like they were butt. Everyone was super mean to him about it, and I was just like, I can't let this go on. Like, this is ridiculous. And so here I go, and it was a whole mess, disaster. It was just really sad. It was unfortunate. And then he retired, so it was even more unfortunate.
Yeah. God, I remember that. It's kind of funny because I started watching TSM when they made it to playoffs, and that's when they had that miraculous run from, like, 6th place up to finals. And I remember I was watching it, I was like, they're playing great. I don't understand why everyone hates on Yellow Star. And then people were like, look at the regular season. I looked at some games. I was like, oh, okay. Yeah. I understand.
I remember that split so much. Not to go on too much of a tangent, but...
No, go on this tangent. I want to hear about it.
But I was like devastated that whole regular split because they were so bad, and then they had that playoffs run. And I remember they qualified for the 4th place, no, not the 4th place, 4 finals on that last Sunday before finals. And finals was in Las Vegas. And I lived in Florida at the time. So they qualified that Sunday. I went to work that Monday. And I was talking to my boss, who I have a really good relationship with. And he's also into like esports and stuff. I got him into it. Double-Ed fans. And
of course.
Yeah.
Sorry.
And I was just like, I really want to go. Like, I really want to see Yellow Star. And I was just like, should I go? And keep in mind, it's like less than a week, in advance. And I'm asking my boss, like, should I go? Like, flights were like $400. I had a friend who was already going to be there offering me, he had an extra ticket and offering me to stay at his hotel for free.
Oh my gosh.
So I literally only had to pay for the flight. So I asked him, I was like, should I go? And he was like, hell yeah, you should go. So I bought my flight that Monday.
Oh my gosh.
Yep.
That's a good boss.
Yep.
And a great story.
Yep. That's how hard I went back then.
So I think it's understandable when people pick pro players who are doing really well to be fans of, right? And that's not any of us in this room.
No.
Enough.
Right.
So I guess what is it that what is it that keeps you being a fan of a pro player even when they are losing?
I think for me it's because well, I mean, nothing can top Clear Love at Worlds 2016, so we can lose like 10 games in a row and I'll be like, this is fine, this is perfectly fine. I think it's just like, for me it's not just about them winning or losing a game, because I feel like, I don't know, personally it feels a bit superficial to just like, oh, I'm just gonna like this player if they win
Right.
Consistently. But if they start losing, then I'm not going to be their fan. And it's like, then you're just not going to be a fan of any player ever, because no one can really be consistent ever.
Right.
So I kind of just look more at, I guess, you start looking at them as people. Like, you start looking at streams and interviews and videos and things like that, and you start liking them more for the people behind the screen, or like the people behind the ID, than just the players. So for me, just like, if my favorite players started losing a lot, I'd still be a fan of them, because I feel like, well, now is the time where they're also gonna need support the most, because they're obviously at a very low point. So then I just have to support them more than I did before.
Yeah. And on top of that, I noticed that I tended to gravitate towards imports a lot of the times when that would happen. And I think part of the reason for that is that, it's uncomfortable to move to another country and live in a place where, at least not in Yellowstar's case or Jensen's even, but, for other imports, you might not even speak the language. And then all you're getting is, people attacking you, on the high end, not caring about you at all. On the low end, being vicious to you. So it's one of those things where, at least in Yellowstar's case, that was a lot of it, where I knew he was already not popular compared to that roster. And I don't know, it just felt bad, knowing that he was over there. People didn't give a shit about him. People especially didn't give a shit about him because they were being terrible, and most of it was being put on him. So I don't know, I guess a part of me wanted to kind of balance it out. I don't know. Like, I don't know.
No, I totally hear you. Like, as somebody who was a fan of the worst LCK team for like 2 years, I get it, because like you said, like, at best they don't care, and at worst they're really mean. And it's like, you feel like there's some cosmic balance in the universe, and like you can somehow offset how bad everybody is just by like being really positive about it, even though that's like kind of silly. But that's how I feel too. For sure. And I do think it's like, to me, I find it an interesting point, because again, most of the people I surround myself with are like really enthusiastic, passionate women. And I don't know if there's like a gendered or social aspect to it, but okay, let me put it this way. Like, I feel like there's a lot of fans who are like, oh, well, if you don't understand exactly why they're a good player, like, you're not a real fan, right? Like, you just like them for some other reason. Like, okay, they're cute, or like they're imports, or they're just, they act really nice. Like, I think like people levied this criticism against Olay fans a lot, like, oh, you just only like him because he has like a good persona, like you don't care about his gameplay. And to me, it's so funny, because also the people I know who are like the most enthusiastic and passionate fans are the ones who are like not there just for the gameplay, right? Like, if you are just there for the gameplay, then is it that you can only like the best players every time, or like the players who like are only losing because their team is bad, right? Like, it's like, it's just like a weird dynamic for me.
It's basically just like, okay, so you're a Bjergsen fan. Like, cool.
Yeah,
actually being a Bjergsen fan is not a personality trait, by the way.
I judge, my favorite players by how much they can see us under a specific amount of time. And if they don't reach that quota, then they're out. Then we move on to the next one.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's like a traditional sport thing, like something about needing to judge people by statistics or something. I guess I don't know, because like, to me, the whole idea of being invested in something and being a fan is so emotional, and I can't imagine like making their success or their gameplay like the barometer of my emotions.
I feel like if you've never cried over a game, like over esports, then I don't even know how to relate to you when it comes to it.
It's like, why are you here if you haven't, exposed your feelings?
Bro, I've cried numerous times.
Same. Oh my god, the amount of times, I think I've cried more times than I've been like, oh, this is such a great feeling.
Oh yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
No, the good is fleeting.
And I mean, like, I cry when it's good too. Like,
Yeah.
I remember when like KT won last summer. I remember I was like crying as hard as score, and like it was just like so funny because, like you said, like I mean, they're never gonna know or really care.
Yeah.
I'm never gonna meet score, that's for sure.
Right.
So
That's
But
true.
yeah, so-
I did cry when C9 made Worlds over summer.
oh, did
yeah,
you?
Yeah.
when they beat TSM, I remember.
Yep. Yeah, I cried.
No, but like also, so to move on like the whole feelings thing, that's why it's so weird if you're just interested or invested in a player. Like if you're only invested in them and it's fine if you're only invested in the gameplay, but then I've noticed that these kind of people are those who tend to judge other fans for the way you're a fan of someone.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how can you be a fan of them if you don't understand jungle pathing? And I'm like, I don't know, man. They're a cool person, okay? I don't know why he went to red buff at that moment and then he ran over to blue buff, but he's a good guy.
Right.
Yeah, and like I don't want to sound like I'm looking down on people who do like things for gameplay.
Mm-hmm.
Like I acknowledge that that's like a really important thing, and I think okay, let me put it this way. I think it would be really hard to be a fan of a pro player who like clearly has no idea what they're doing.
Right.
It might be funny, like I don't know. Actually, now that I've said it out loud, I probably would try. Like there's something in me that's like weirdly like I don't know, perverse, in that I think if you did put up a pro who like clearly had no effing idea what he was doing on the Rift, I probably would become his fan and then feel really invested in his career.
I mean, I do like some pros that arguably
Lose their
we're
mind.
not sure. We're not sure. That's all I'm gonna say.
Like there's definitely been times where I feel like people that I'm big fans of do in fact just completely lose it on the Rift. And
Yeah.
so like but so I do think that's really important, and like I really do love the people who are there for the jungle pathing or like are pointing out really interesting interactions between their items and their when they choose to use XYZ. Like I think that is really important. But like I guess for me, I think more people than they choose to admit are actually there for emotional reasons.
Mm-hmm.
And like maybe that emotional reason is like you're really invested in the player, so now it feels like an extension of you, and like when they succeed you succeed, which is known as like bathing in a reflected glory in traditional sports, berging as they call it. But yeah, I think like I wish like people were just more honest about it. Like I sincerely doubt that most people who are fans of Bjergsen like could actually tell you why he's a good mid laner, and that's okay.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right.
Bjergsen fans.
We should just title it that.
Bjergsen fans?
Yeah.
Bjergsen fans. And then the first minute we're like, so now we're gonna talk about Jensen and just bamboozle everyone.
Yeah. I mean, it's what the TSM subreddit does, so.
So I guess like let's put it in a different way. Like, do you think you're entitled to anything as a fan from the pro player?
So, okay, you know what? We've had enough conversations about this that I'm going to answer somewhat controversially, and I'm going to say yes.
Oh, okay. What are you entitled to?
I think that when you decide that you want to take this on as your job and you get paid what you get paid, it is to some degree your responsibility to ensure that your fans feel like they have a reason to be acknowledging you. And that's not to say that you need to spend, tons of time paying attention to them. You need to spend extra time outside LCS, doing meet and greets or whatever. You don't have to be like double lift and, set up private play dates with your fans and stuff like that. He goes above and beyond, and he's allowed to do that. I by no means expect that. It's super simple to not make it seem like you acknowledging your fans is ruining your day.
Mm-hmm.
It's super easy to just spend 2 seconds to actually, pay attention to what this person's saying to you. They really like you. Maybe they flew out to come see you from wherever they live. It's not hard to not make them feel guilty about the fact that they had to take up some of your time. And I
Yeah.
think a lot of pros do that. You know, like I said, double lift is kind of the gold standard. You know, double lift is so good with fans. I've seen him numerous times. I've been around him numerous times. He's amazing with his fans. There are other players who are not.
Yeah, I agree on like because entitlement can seem like a very negative word.
Right.
But in this case, it's basically just like try to make your fans feel like, you know, it was worth it to be here. Like not because they didn't come just to see you play, because then they could have just sat at home and watched the stream, but it was just like to meet this player in like their physical form, how to say.
Right.
And I've also noticed it at the few events I've been that some players, they kind of make it seem like it's a chore, and maybe it is a chore, but they just make it seem like, oh, I'd rather be somewhere else. And even if you feel away, I mean, at least hide it a bit for the people who, like Ginger said, like they might have flew out or saved a lot of money for this event. Just a couple seconds given to them could make their whole day. Like speaking about, I think some veteran players know how important fans can be, like double lift, but also in my case with Clear Love, when he had his birthday, I think it was when he turned 24, there were a bunch of fans who did like this birthday batch for him. He wasn't invited to it. It was just like among fans. And then he surprised them by actually going there. Aww. And it was like, thank you guys so much. And he like sat there and opened presents with people.
Oh, that's cute.
And it's like, I'm not telling players like you have to go out and hang out with your fans, but it's like you can like make it seem like you acknowledge them the way that they acknowledge you, because it's very easy to tell when someone really isn't into it and it's kind of one-sided, and then it makes it a bit awkward for the person involved, or like the fan involved. You feel bad. Yeah.
You do.
It's like, oh, sorry, I'm taking up your time or something like that.
Oh, I've done it numerous times. There have been plenty of times where, you know, I've gone to see one of my favorite players. I don't want to name names because I still stan him. But, you know, he definitely makes it a chore to want to go see him. And let's make it very clear. People don't like hearing this, especially people that work in esports, but let's be very clear and very honest. You have your job and you get paid what you get paid because of us. Period.
Yeah. No, I agree. And I think like I totally echo what you guys say. Like I don't think you have to go above and beyond. I don't think you have to like make every single fan feel like they're loved and appreciated all the time, right? Like I get that there's a lot of them. I get that when you go to those events, sometimes you really have somewhere to be and then somebody asks you for a photo and like it sucks. And I know that stuff can be like, and let's also acknowledge a lot of these people are not great social people. Like they have been playing games since they were like tiny children, and their entire interaction with most people most days is like through the game or their teammates. And like I think it's easy for like me to say, since my job is essentially making people feel good, right? Like I would never survive as doing my job if I was like had bad people skills. So like for some of like I totally also acknowledge that like there's a lot of socialization that just by the nature of their job they're not encountering. But like to Ginger's point, like this is your job. Like being a pro player these days is not about sitting on a stage playing games. Like that might have been true in 2011, in 2012, right? Like I don't know if it was ever true, but I think it was truer back then.
Right.
But nowadays, like, I'm sorry, like you have responsibilities, and like it's like it's rough, and I know that's not what you came into this career to do, but like I think it would just be great if everybody kind of acknowledged that more and maybe gave players training or like tried to, you know, help them a little bit in knowing how to interact with fans.
Yeah, I think it's amazing that's not a thing.
Yeah.
At least it doesn't
like, give
seem
them
to
some
be.
PR skills, things like that.
Yeah,
and
it's nuts.
I think it is becoming more and more this way. Like I think I have heard of certain players do getting like lessons in PR, or even in some cases asking for them. But I think it's like we can't expect everybody to be double lift. Like
no,
like, I'm really glad that not everybody is double lift, because that would be terrifying.
Yeah.
But, like some players are just more like are better at it than others, and like I just wish like I don't know, like I think if I was a pro player and I was really, really shy, like a lot of it is just shyness or like awkwardness. And like I wish somebody would just sit me down and be like, this is also your job. You know, like you gotta get used to it.
You know who one of the best players with fans is, and it makes me so upset?
Who?
Dardoch.
Oh.
He's so good with fans. So good.
We've come full circle.
Bro, it's shocking. He's like doing fan service from the stage. He's like throwing hearts and stuff, like acknowledging people in the crowd. Like he gives full on good hugs at fan meets. Like it's ridiculous.
Wow.
Yeah, no, it's nuts.
Maybe he's like the opposite type. You know how most pros, they're bad players or like bad teammates.
Yeah.
Yeah, but in his case, it's like the opposite.
I know.
So my feelings about Dardoch being what they are, he's a really passionate person. So like that doesn't surprise me. You know, like I think.
No, it's just unfortunate.
I can see that. Yeah.
Like, why can't you share your people skills with other people in need?
Yeah.
Do you ever feel like it's weird when you interact with a pro? And let me put some context to this. Nowadays there's like a lot of content about them. There's a lot of interviews. You can like learn details about them that obviously they would never divulge to you in like a 2-minute fan meet. Mm-hmm. Is it ever weird when you meet them and know that you know so much more about them than they know about you?
Extremely.
Yeah.
It's so weird. Oh, I hate it so much. I don't like interacting with pros at all, honestly. Like being completely honest, I hate it.
Why?
It's just uncomfortable. I don't know. I guess because there's so much like backstory sort of that goes into it. Partially what you said, the fact that I know so much about you already. And like I'm just like the idea of like how clearly excited I am to meet this kid that plays like video games that I'm almost 10 years older than.
Don't put it like that.
Right. And then on top of it, you know, you also feel worse when they do not meet your interests almost whatsoever. And you're just like, cool, I'm the only person that cares about this interaction. Great. Yeah, I don't know. It's weird. I also have a tendency to run into pros at really uncomfortable times in my life. God. So that's probably has something to do with it.
I think that because the pros I've met, they haven't really been those I'm like a super big fan of. It's like, oh, this pro player, they're cool. And then you meet them, you're like, hello. So I'm just trying to visualize, like, if I ever met my favorite players.
If you ever met Clear Love?
Like, I'm thinking about it, and I think, honestly, I would just straight up die. I think I would just freeze up, and then I would die. And
She's just gonna puke at his feet.
I'm gonna run away in the opposite direction, like, oh, hello, it's you, and then I'll just run away. So
why? Why would you feel that way?
Because I think it's just, like Ginger said, it's like, I think the difference between if you meet an idol, like a K-pop idol, for example, and then you meet a pro players, because especially esports players, they're so, like, you know so much about them, and they're so accessible, like on Twitter and everything. You could, if you wanted to, you could chat with them or something like that. And then to actually meet them, it's kind of like, we're not really friends, but I know too much about you for you to be a stranger to me. And then you're also super hyper to meet this person. Like, you're so excited. And then you meet them and you're like, I don't know how to words. So you run away. So that's a future sneak peek into what would happen if I ever met Clear Love for all of you interested out there.
That's why my new thing is thinking of questions that people haven't asked them, so that I have them ready. And then I get to learn
when you meet them.
Yeah, I get to learn a new interesting thing that isn't just, readily accessible on a Travis interview. Oh, and then it's also, a conversation starter, something to talk about outside of the usual I love you.
So I've been to LCS, and like the way those fan meets are set up, you really don't have that much time to interact with the pros, which is like, in my case, a good thing, because I have the same feelings. Like, maybe I don't know if there's anybody that, like, if I met I would puke, but I definitely, like, have the same feelings where I was like, I don't know what to say. Like, I don't know how to convey, like, my feelings in any way. And like, you are clearly an awkward like young man / adult man, sometimes very small teenager. And like, and I just like, I know you're not going to take this well, you know? So like, there's just like so much of like, and so all I end up doing is just like, I don't know, like nothing.
Right.
Like you just continue on that interaction as if it was like a totally normal thing. And it's like, it's so weird. Like it honestly is really weird.
That's why I have to go in with a game plan now, because otherwise I don't know what to do. I'm just like, cool, you're great, man. All right, I'm gonna go because you hate this. So.
Yeah, it's like, I don't want to make them uncomfortable, you know, like, so it's like, I don't want to make them uncomfortable. They, like, I don't want to, like, intrude on their lives.
Yep.
I also, like, you know, like, you don't want to sound creepy. Like, you don't want to be that person that, like, sounds really creepy when you meet somebody. I don't know. It is really weird. And I do think the fact that they're just, like, and I'm not demeaning this profession or anything, but the fact that they play video games for a living and like that's why you're really invested in them also adds an extra level of like, like
what am I doing?
Like what am I doing? And it never feels as fresh as that moment where you like actually meet a pro player that you really like.
So I was so shocked this last time when I went to LCS in the summer and I actually met Jensen for the first time, and Linda can attest to this. I was so blown by the fact that he was just like a regular person. Not in the sense that I put him on a pedestal, but in the sense that he was capable of carrying on a regular human being conversation.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I just didn't expect that from him, of all people, I think. And
yeah.
I was just like so shocked. And he was like totally into it. He was like super excited about the fact that, you know, someone was talking to him, and I asked him if we could go take a picture, and he was like, yeah, let's go, you know, like super into it. And I was just like, what is happening right now?
You're like, is this a hidden camera?
Like I'm getting punked right now. There's no way that my fave is being like this right now, especially, you know, in comparison to the other one. But
did you expect him just to like shut down?
Kind of. I expected him to be more awkward. He definitely doesn't come off to me as like a shining pillar of, you know, confidence and extrovertedness when I watch interviews and whatnot. So it was a little bit shocking to me, yeah. And you know, the actually being excited and willing to do fan interaction stuff is always going to be a shock to me. So that was another one.
But I also think that, and I don't know if it's just me personally who feels this way, but when it comes to fans who are women, like I feel a bit more like I have to watch what I'm saying because I don't want to creep them out. Like,
absolutely.
Technically, I shouldn't be afraid to say, "Oh, I love you. You're great," or something like that. But if I were to meet my favorite player, I'm like, what do I say? Like, nice job, dude, bro.
Yeah, right.
Good job. And then just walk away. Where will they think it's weird that they have... Because I think in at least Eastern League of Legends, like in China and Korea, they're very used to it being a lot of like both guy fans and girl fans. Like it's a kind of like well proportion of fangirls and fanboys. But then when it comes to like Western scene in Europe and North America, when you have like fangirls come up to pros and they're like, oh, I love you, you're great. Sometimes I've noticed that some people will be like, oh, they're only here for so-and-so, or like they'll just think that they have some kind of ulterior motive, even though they might just be a fan.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. And last time when I went to LCS, I was with a friend who was, and maybe still is, I don't know if she would characterize herself this way, a big Reckless fan. And you know, she has herself like a very personal story about Reckless, where she, for reasons, she was really quite attached to him historically. And so Fnatic, because this was Rift Rivals at the time, Fnatic was doing a meet and greet at the Best Buy where you could go and take a picture with all of them. And we were like, oh, well, we have to go. We have to go. They were also giving out free tacos, which, like, to be honest, was the reason why I wanted to go. But,
sign me up.
Not that I don't love Fnatic, but like free tacos. Hello.
Right.
So we went, and they were doing group photos, and then she asked the people who were running it, like the managers, I don't really know what their actual roles were, but whether or not she could have a picture with Reckless. And I, never have I ever been so hyper aware of the fact that I was a woman at that moment, because it was Reckless. And as a woman asking for a personal photo with Reckless, it was something so supercharged about that.
Yeah.
And then his teammates were kind of laughing and joshing around, which I don't know if they would have done. Maybe they would have done the exact same thing if we had been men. But for some reason it felt so much we're being judged at this moment for being women fans of Reckless.
Yeah.
Even though none of us had said anything, we had not, there was no oh, you're so handsome, there was nothing here that was in any way, shape, or form feminine, but it was just that moment you just feel it.
No, yeah, you absolutely do. It's super bad, and I feel it. I don't know if I feel it extra because I have somewhat closer relationships with some people in NA. I'm pretty friendly with Loco. I ended up being pretty friendly with Yellowstar. Double Lift definitely knows who I am. So it's even worse then because, when people know who you are, it's you feel like every interaction you have with anyone else in the sphere is under a microscope. They're always assuming that you're talking to so-and-so because of X reason, which may or may not even be the case. But if they know anything about anything that you've done with any other player, then that's now the reason that you're here 100% of the time.
Yeah. It's always feeling I think for casual women fans is oh, you want to have sex with the player, or oh, you think they're cute and you want to flirt with them. For some reason that's always the underlying thing, and it's weird because in my case I have never ever I cannot put in enough evers in this sentence. That has never ever occurred to me ever. That is not at all how I feel about it, and it's a funny thing to always carry around, and I'm sure in your case, Ginger, it's even heightened since you have personal interactions with people.
I think that if you're a fan of someone, just like when we talked about gameplay and mechanics and things like that, everyone's a fan for different reasons, and some people are oh well, I just like them because they're cute. But the interesting thing is that, at least in my opinion, I've noticed that for a lot of women, people kind of just go directly to you only like them because you think they're cute, or you only like them because of some physical feature, and it's not really you might like them because they're a charming person or something like that, or they have a funny personality, or you like them when they play these champs. But it's almost always that it's oh, you only like them because you are superficial or something like that.
And okay, this may be going on a tangent. We don't have to keep going down this path, but it's fine if you only like them because they're cute. Let's be real. People like things for all sorts of reasons. I complain about this all the time. People like pros sometimes because they used to main their favorite champ.
Exactly.
Why is it any different? And it's different. I really feel it's different because you're a woman and there's an assumed heterosexuality. There's an assumed sexual thing about it. It's assumed that because you think that they're cute, you also don't understand anything else about the game.
Right.
So there's a negation there, right? It's not just that you like this player because you're cute. Because you like the player because they're cute, nothing else you say carries any weight, which is really that to me is the really strange part.
Right.
It's we know how to multitask. I can find someone cute and be I love it when they play this champ.
I don't understand it because the amount of traveling to watch games that I've done, and maybe even for example, when I went to Vegas to watch TSM for Yellowstar, he was mostly the reason that I went. I still watched all those games,
right?
Especially the TL and Immortals games.
Oh god,
I still watched those too. He had nothing to do with those ones. I was still there.
Right. Yeah, to be frank, if I only liked a pro gamer because they're cute, I would not sit through those days. Like,
Hell no.
like remember when they used to have double streams? Like those,
Oh, God,
like
yeah.
best
Oh,
of threes
my
on double
God.
streams. Those days went on forever.
Whew.
You'd have to really find somebody like the cutest person
Yeah.
in the world to just go there for like one like shot of their face.
Oh my god. Yeah.
It's like we don't sit through Jin Air Green Wings games because we have some inherent. They're super cute. We just sit there because esports is suffering. That's the moral of the story.
And on that note,
Yeah.
why don't we go to our recommendations for this episode? Ginger, yours is related.
It
so
is.
do you want to go first?
So it is kind of like a tiny, short documentary style series that they did. It's called The Story of Jensen from Permaban to Pro. For anyone that isn't familiar with his history or just kind of wants to do a refresher, then that's a good way to start. Let you know all the aforementioned nonsense that he got into, and then kind of how he got into LCS. Past that, yeah, I think that's pretty much it for me.
Yeah, and then the one that I picked was it was kind of funny because Ginger actually she was gonna go with this, and then I stole it from her because that's how you do it in life. No, but the one I've chosen is the latest duos piece on Crown and Core JJ, because I really liked how they focused on, because they both won worlds, and it feels like everyone kind of just like forgot that Samsung Galaxy won worlds because of everything that has happened in between. So it's really interesting to just see them talk about, their feelings on it. It's a lot of feelings focus, which I like. And also to like connect back to being a fan and such. Crown does mention that, he's trying to be happy again. And one of the moments where he actually, felt happy was when Optic won their first game, and he looked out and he could high-five all these fans. Mm-hmm. And these fans, they might not even have been Optic fans or something, but like they were there and they saw him and they said like, good job. And he doesn't know what their names are, but just like seeing those fans, it made him feel happy. So that's another thing that I think that fans can have a lot of impact on like their favorite players, or not even favorite players, just like the pro players in general.
Yeah.
And to bring this back on a superficial note, whoever dressed Crown and Core JJ, or if they dressed themselves for this shot, like major props. Because this might be the best dressed any pro has looked in a duos video in a very, very, very long time. Like Core JJ is in this like great like wool like out or like blazer top coat thing, and Crown has a really nice like kind of shiny sateen bomber jacket on.
I know.
They look great.
Yeah.
The whole thing was so good.
We really come a long way from like the past esports clothing that some professional players would sport.
Yeah.
I can tell you straight up, like I have rewatched some of them. Like Froggen and Diamond Prox are in like, I don't know, like t-shirts, and like and in the one the double of Biofrost one, Biofrost is like in a button down like short sleeve with dots or something. I mean, they're just like this was like so next level. I was really impressed, and I don't know if it's their own wardrobe or I don't know if Riot gave them that wardrobe, but it was good.
Yeah.
It was a good wardrobe.
Yeah, definitely.
So I have picked a Twitter account that I don't know where this guy came from. I think it's a guy, but I'm just going to use they to be safe. Their Twitter username is Atantalas, so ATANTALAS, and they do these doodles for LEC and LCS primarily, but a little bit of LCK. And they produce these doodles, I swear, at like 3 of them a minute. They're always online. They always manage to do just really funny doodles of the casters and the pros and whatever is going on at the moment. It's unbelievable, and like everybody has been retweeting their comics, so you've probably seen one if you haven't been paying attention. But I really, really impressed. I don't know where this person came from. It seems like they came out of nowhere, and all of a sudden my entire Twitter feed was like inundated with their doodles. I had to go look them up. Highly recommend it. They're super cute. And if you follow LCS or LEC, you'll definitely, I think, get a kick out of them.
Excellent.
Yeah, it's like the amount of work they produce in like the short time. Like they it could be like two casters talking and then they reply with a drawing like, here you go. It's like, how did you do that? Yeah. Where are you?
I don't, yeah, like, who are you? I know that they do art for a living because they say so on their, like, Ko-fi profile, but I'm just, whoever you are, like, seriously, you produce art at a speed that I thought was impossible.
Right.
And it's really great art, too, so props to you.
That's awesome.
So thank you so much, Ginger, for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. Is there any last words, anything you want to say?
I want to end this episode with another nice story about Jensen. And Linda probably knows what I'm going to talk about. But, so my friend, Julia, went to LCS yesterday. And I asked her, I just told her kind of jokingly, like, oh, tell Jensen I said I love him. So I wake up this morning and she has posted just like a tiny, like, you know, fan account sort of thing of her interaction with him. And she was basically, she got a picture with them and she was on his side. And when it ended, she was just like, oh, my friend Ginger wanted me to tell you that she loves you. And he was just like, apparently a little bit surprised. And he was just like, oh, that's so nice. Tell her I love her too. And I was just like, he's the greatest, man.
He's fresh premium milk, you know.
He is the
boy.
freshest loaf of bread.
I'm glad we truly brought this back full circle to the beginning. That's a really cute story. Thank you for sharing it, Ginger.
Of course.
Thank you as always, Linda, for joining me.
No problem.
Is there anything you want to say before we drop this episode?
I just want to, you know, just reiterate that I would not puke on Clear Love's shoes if I ever saw him. I would not puke. I don't puke. I would run away. I would probably faint, but I would not puke. Okay, just want to put that out there. So we're cool.
Noted.
So this is Kathy. I probably would puke on Clear Love's shoes for Linda if I ever met him.
Thank you.
Thank you guys for listening to this episode of Pod of Ages. As always, you can find more information about us at twitter.com/podofages or on SoundCloud at soundcloud.com/podofages. We'll be back in 2 weeks. Thank you for joining us.
Bye.